Welcome to the Move Local podcast. Our mission is to connect the movers and shakers of the Dundas and Hamilton area who pride themselves on growing a healthier and more connected community. We will do this through having conversations around health, education, entrepreneurship, and much more. We want to be part of helping you move confident, move free, and move local. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Move Local podcast, brought to you by The Movement. My name is Dalton, and I'm coming at you guys with another episode this week. We're keeping it on the food theme. Last week's episode, we had on Liz from Delusional Sauce Co. talking all about hot sauce. Today, we have Chef Clay Smith on the podcast. He is a private event chef. We're going to talk all about his career, how he got to where he was, and some of the things that he's doing. So, Clay, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How's the day been so far?
Quiet.
Yeah,
relaxing.
Good. Yeah, we're talking about that, like, as a from your standpoint, like the Monday's usually a little bit of like a slower day. You're not typically like serving anyone, I guess the term would be.
No events going on Mondays,
events,
right? Nobody's in the mood to be partying on a Monday.
Yeah, sure. So you can ease into it, get prepared. But, before we dive into that, I would love to like just get to know a little bit about you and kind of how you maybe got into the world of cooking, your upbringing. Was that always something that was a big part of your life that kind of drew you to it? Like, how did that journey become?
So we could go a long story or shorter story.
Take it wherever you want.
Okay, so food has always, from my memory, been part of life. So, like, even as a little kid, if the family was making pierogies, the kids always had to have some sort of helping hand. So I don't really have a memory of, like, not having food part of the life. I'm one of 5 kids, and I'm the one that enjoyed doing that. I was never trying to get out of it or things like that. Like, we had a lot of, all my great-grandparents are from somewhere else. So there's a lot of different influences in my family of the food that we eat, things like that. My parents would have friends that were like from Italy or France or things like that. So we always ate like different foods. And to me, I just always found it fascinating. I could cook in the kitchen on my own when I was like 8 years old. I could make whole dinners and I think the first thing I made like dinner-wise was like a lasagna from scratch. And that satisfaction of, presenting something and seeing people satisfied from it, like, it just blows your mind when you find that one thing that connects, right? I'm sure, like, when you help somebody who has, like, an injury or can't tie their shoelaces or something like that, and then, like, they get it.
Totally.
Right? You see that satisfaction, the light up, and you're like, that's it, right? So it went that, and then...
Was that something that was always sorry to interrupt. Was that something that was always you were encouraged to do, or was it more like you were asking to cook, you were asking to like make the lasagna, or were your parents like facilitating that because they saw that it was something that you like enjoyed?
I think it's hard to look back at when you're so young and remember it clearly, but the way that I remember it going was it was a chore that we had to help with, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. So
because I enjoyed it, I was always asking to help. I was a troublemaker as a kid, so like I can't get in trouble if I'm doing this, right? Or like I could be ungrounded and do this thing that I like to do. My parents, I think then later on realized that I really enjoyed it, and then were like, yeah, just let them cook dinner. And I think it took
That's
off
good
their
for
plate.
them.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I think it was a win-win situation. We never had recipes in the house, so I probably made a lot of terrible dinners along the way.
Yeah.
And then moving forward into life, I mean, even like it wasn't long ago I was going through a box at my parents' house, and I found like a thing from grade 1 where I was like, I either want to be a world's famous chef or the world's best soccer player. And I've never played soccer in my life. I have at least coordinated legs you could have. So, I mean, one kind of stuck.
Yeah. And
then I learned really quickly from people like how terrible it can be working in the food industry. So then I really tried to steer my life away from it for some time, like going into it as a profession. So I started working when I was like 9, I think, child labor, doing residential high-end construction with my grandfather.
Okay.
Started doing roofing when I was 12.
So like the hard work.
The hard work, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Not that like cooking isn't hard work, but the more like labor intensive. Like
yeah, like you know, being like not even weighing 100 pounds and trying to lift a bundle of shingles
yeah, it's
up
a different
to a roof,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
It's very different.
Yeah.
So I worked a lot of jobs. I worked in some kitchens along the way, really trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then fast forward a little bit, I started being like, well, I want to work with food, so let's try food photography, and I seem to have a knack for it. So I was doing that, and then somebody said to me, hey, do you want to teach a cooking class? And I'm like, sure, I'll do a cooking class. And then I got into that, and then somebody was like, hey, do you want to cook for my event? Started doing that. Somebody said to me, hey, do you want to work in my kitchen? Work in a kitchen. Didn't like the environment of the kitchen, went back to doing the private stuff. So I kind of really accidentally fell into the world of cooking again by trying to avoid it.
Yeah.
But it kind of landed in a place that I felt really comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
So that's the story of how I got into cooking professionally.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean I don't really know the typical journey of a chef, like especially like a private chef. Like when I was looking into you and like what you're doing, you know, cooking in private events and doing private meals for people, and just even looking at like, I mean, your website and your Instagram are beautiful, and like you can tell you put a lot of effort into like making the things presentable and like delivering a high-end experience is what I get from like what you're putting out. I feel like it seems like something that should be this like crazy journey of like you slaved away in this kitchen and you learned from this chef in France and you did this, and then finally you're like, I need to step out on my own and do my own thing. But that obviously
I skipped all that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you can definitely start out in dish pits, and you can, and I knew I never wanted to do that, right? I've done grueling work in my life. I didn't want to go from one grueling work to another grueling work to another grueling work. I've worked the line. I quite enjoy working the line, but I find that in the universe of cooking, there's still a lot of characters in there that are unsavory. A lot of really great people. But you work in a job where you get off at a time that's unsavory, right? Like oftentimes you're not getting out of a restaurant until, and I think things are changing now. Restaurants are closing a lot earlier than they used to. But it used to be that, you know, you're done work, either you're working for catering or a high-end restaurant, you're done work, all the bars are closed, all the restaurants are closed. But you're working 6 days a week, right? So you have people getting into like unsavory things, and I never felt comfortable around that crowd of people. Always been very clean edge with drugs and things like that. So and then I am somebody who, I mean, you look at my website, I designed my whole website, did all the code and everything behind it and things like that. I'm somebody who, if I want to learn something, I'm going to go real deep into learning the process of it. I do that with cooking. I do that with my website, with photography, really anything I want to know. I'm the type of person that I'm going to just figure it out and do it. So people always ask me, like, what if you weren't a chef, what would you be? And in that pinnacle point of your life where you're like, okay, I gotta pick something, I was like, I'm either gonna go into anthropology and archaeology and make nothing for the rest of my life, or be a chef, and I won't be a chef.
Yeah.
So I'm somebody who really strives for any sort of knowledge you can give me.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I've been able to really get to the point where I am at.
Yeah.
It's just self-dedication and determination.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, obviously, you know, you're in a sense, you're like a creator. Like, you're creating these meals, you're creating this content, you're creating these websites. Like, you're learning how to do all these things. And it's even funny you bring up, like, earlier, you know, you never had any recipes in the house. You were always just like creating these things based off of, you know, you trying to figure it out. And like you said, you probably served a lot of bad meals early on, but like it seems like there's that skill set that you have and maybe fostered and developed that allowed for you to kind of put yourself in these positions to manifest and make these things real, you know?
I mean, I pin it all to luck. Like, I think that luck is what gets you places. I think that you have to put in a little bit of work and then put the work out there, and then luck will either catch it or not, right? So I think that there are so many talented people out there that never get the luck. And then there's some people that aren't talented or mildly talented or very talented, and they get that luck of the draw, right? I've found that I've gotten very lucky in life in some regards. So, I mean, I'm very grateful for that, right?
Yeah.
But you have to be able to be seen to get that luck.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I think the one missing piece sometimes is like the courage and the vulnerability to like put something out there. Like a lot of people don't do that step, which never puts them in a position to have luck happen.
And I have a theory on this. My theory is a lot of people say that they're scared to fail. But I think on the flip side, I think that one thing that I learned in life that really helped me was the fear of success.
Yeah.
Right? The fear of success says, what do I have to do after I succeed? Right? What's the follow-up? How do I take this opportunity is sometimes the more fearful part than failing. You fail, you move on, right? But you succeed, you have to keep going.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's funny you bring that up because I think I've talked about this before just with like friends. I've written about that idea because I think I've struggled with that for a while until I got over that part of like, I was more fearful of
There's
like,
probably trauma behind it.
Probably,
Right?
probably is. But like, I've always wondered, I've always fear of success because for me, it's like, if I do this and let's say it succeeds, now I'm at this next level that results in a lot more responsibilities, a lot more people probably that I'm responsible for, a lot more things that could go wrong that maybe could have bigger consequences.
More eyes on you.
More eyes, more
Right.
attention. Like a lot of that really was a driver of fear for me, for sure, for a long time. And probably maybe in some senses a little bit still, but I think I've realized that
Well, because failure is easy.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of people like really hype it up like it's this big thing.
Yeah.
But it's easy to fail.
Yeah.
Right? You can do it to yourself. You can have like outside forces come in and help you fail. At the end of the day, it's probably most likely you or bad luck. But success, that's the harder part, right?
Yeah.
Like I know when I first started getting like eyes on me, it was like that was scary, right? To be recognized for things and to be given opportunities. And in the beginning, I'd say no to opportunities just because I was like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can handle that. But now I'm getting a lot better with that. But yeah, I think that when you look at it in that way, it is the success that is the scary part.
So from your point, like, you know, you kind of figure this out on your own. Like, how did you develop like the skills? Like, what was the way that you kept leveling yourself up? Because even though like, you know, maybe you didn't take a traditional path, like you still have to produce a great product to be able to do the things that you're doing. So what did that like refining process look like for you?
I think, you know, one thing that my parents did well was whenever I was cooking, they'd always like, they'd be cooking, they'd be like, I haven't had any season into this. Go at it. Right? And you learn really quickly how far you can go, how far you can't go, what's too far, what's not enough. Like you learn those things. I think that one advantage that I've had in my career is my palate. I think that I have a really good palate, and to the point where now I can know what something's going to taste like just by smelling it. And I've had chefs say to me, I worked for this one chef that I used him as a reference, and he said to the next chef, he said, if you don't want him to recreate your food, don't let him try it. and I didn't think that chef liked me, so it was a huge compliment, right? To have somebody else say that. And so I just, to me, it's about, I read a lot. I have copious amounts of cookbooks and textbooks. I have researched. When I was a kid, I used to go to the library and just take out cookbooks. The Food Network used to be about cooking. Teaching you how to cook. Right? That was like my favorite thing to watch as a little kid, was the Food Network. I'm always trying to like get from people how they cook, why they cook a certain way. I think just being a sponge. I had a chef one time tell me, like, no matter where you go, pretend you're stupid and absorb everything. And I've taken that to heart. I also like to explore historical context, how people used to eat, where your food comes from. So I have a really deep understanding of food itself. And yeah, I think just continuously educating yourself. I didn't go to school to be a chef or that. I went to school to be a personal trainer. That didn't last long. And I think just if you have the want to learn, you can do anything, especially today.
Yeah.
I think the kids are so gifted with the access to information that they have.
Yeah.
Right, that it'll be crazy to see what some people come up with soon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's an exciting thing, that access to information for people.
It's just how to use it.
Right.
Right.
With anything comes responsibility, I guess.
Exactly.
But yes, okay, so that makes sense. And then, like, you know, I guess going from, okay, you're developing these skills, you're finding, you know, you're soaking it all in, you're a sponge, you're moving your way through the space. Like, what was like the final thing where you're like, all right, I'm gonna just go and start like doing this for a career, like in my own thing? Because like I think, you know, that in of itself, from being an entrepreneur, is a whole other side of it. It's like you can cook, but like how do you then make this a business that is sustainable for your life?
Yeah, so it was right before COVID happened. I was working in a restaurant. I was the chef. I don't want to say restaurant names or that, but and I was exhausted. It was grueling work. I was working 16 to 18 hour days because I didn't have control of the staff for some reason, and I didn't trust the staff that much. So I was basically, as the head chef, doing all the prep, all the ordering, all the, like, basically there wasn't a thing in that kitchen that wasn't touched by me. Dishes were behind. I would be the one washing dishes with the dishwashers. And I was just like, this is bullshit, right? Eventually I just quit. I walked out. And then right before COVID, that's whenever, like, I started to get really busy, and I was doing pop-ups and things like that, having more people interested in having my food as an experience in their home. And then COVID happened, and right before COVID happened, I was just like, I was on an upward trajectory, and then COVID happened. It was just like crash, right? And then I adapted. I kept pushing forward, and then during COVID, my career started going back up again. So that was kind of like right before COVID, where I was like, I can do this for a living,
Right?
No problem. And then shortly before COVID ended, I was just sitting at home, and this is kind of what solidified it. I had 3 phone calls that day from people I've never spoken to, never, like, have no association with, don't know how they got my number or anything. Called me up. We have this high net worth individual wants you to be his private chef. He's gonna, you know, he has to go to Naples. You got to go with him. This, that, right?
Right.
Like my girlfriend's pregnant at the time. I'm like super honored. Like, we're gonna pay you 20 grand a month to do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, super honored, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Right. Another person called me up the same day. They said, we're gonna offer you, I think it was like 16 grand
Right.
a month. Same thing. But like, you don't have to go to like Italy and things like that. Or, and I was like, how many days off a week do I get? They're like, none.
Yeah.
Like, not doing it.
Yeah.
Same day, somebody else calls me. They're like, we have this much. It was around the same amount. They're like, we're gonna offer you this, and like, it was a six month contract or 5 months, something like that. So I'm like, okay, I'll try this. But like, that was like, I can make big bank.
Right. You're like seeing like, okay, people are reaching out.
Yeah, people are reaching out. I don't know how they're getting me. I don't know how they're finding out about me. And then since then, I've gotten to cook for like people I never thought I'd get to cook for. I've gotten really cool experiences from then on. And I want to say that was 2-ish years ago, a bit more than 2 years ago. And then since then, I'm just like, sometimes I'm in awe of what I do.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's a pretty incredible thing.
Yeah. It's very, like, you have good awareness, it seems like, to know what is going to be something that's right for you. I just like, or maybe
I think that's trial and error.
Yeah, you've learned that along the way.
You learn, like, not everything that glitters is gold, that old saying.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think when you're younger, you're more willing to rush into things, which I think getting screwed in life is a great lesson. But eventually you have to learn not to get screwed.
Yeah. You have to actually learn from the...
you have to learn from the lessons, right?
Yeah.
You get screwed so many times, and eventually you start looking at things more cautiously. Opportunities come in, and You learn how to say no to them, things like that. I mean, like you run a physio place. How many people come to you and ask you for a discount?
That actually come and ask for one?
Yeah, that are bold enough. You have a physical establishment,
Yeah.
right?
I want to say not often.
Right? People come to me and ask for discounts all of the time.
Yeah.
Right? And when you're first starting out, you're like, oh, I don't want it, but I'll do it because I want to spread the business.
And then I grow, yeah.
But it never, those things never lead down a good path because they'll call you up next time.
Hey,
and they'll say, hey, why is your price double?
Yeah.
Like, you're an asshole now, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to learn really quick, like when to say no, when to not take opportunities, when to take opportunities.
What your worth is.
Which is a really hard thing to determine.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Especially whenever you're freelance. You put a roof over your head and people will never question what you're worth.
Right.
Right? But you do something going into people's homes and that, and they start bartering automatically.
Right.
So now when people barter, I'm just like, no.
Yeah, you're at a place where like you don't.
Yeah, I don't, like, plus if it already tells you that person doesn't see you as worth that.
Right, they don't value what you're providing.
And it's always the people who try to barter with you that then are like, well, are you going to bring this? Are you going to bring that? And
yeah,
it's like,
so true.
Yeah, they're always the person that are going to try to extract the most value out of the littlest amount that they can pay. So you get a keen eye for recognizing that once you've taken it on so many times.
Yeah, totally, for sure. I would love to hear a little bit about like what, I'm sure you've cooked for a wide variety of people and a wide variety of settings, but like when someone calls you and they're like, hey, I want you to come do this private cooking for me at my house, like for this evening, for this event, like what is the process like for you? Like, are you going in and coming in with your own ideas and your own food, or are they asking you like, hey, we would like this? Like, how does it all go?
So it used to be like a more collaborative back and forth type thing, and COVID saved me from that. So COVID allowed me to say, I don't know if I'll be able to get that day because the supply chain was so messed up. So somebody would say, oh, I want like this on the menu, and I'd be like, I can't promise you that. Right? I'm not going to be looking around for 2 days just to find these ingredients, right? So I switched to a model of tell me your preferences, tell me your dislikes, tell me something you never want to see on the menu, and tell me what you're allergic to. Pay me this amount, I'll show up.
Yeah.
And if you pay me this amount, I'll do this many courses. If you pay me this amount, I'll do this many courses. But you have no say in what the actual menu is. Yeah. Right? But I'm going to cater, every menu I do is different. But it's based off of your preferences. So it allows me the freedom to, I think, give you more value. Somebody might say to me, I want lobster. And I don't know what the price of lobster is going to be in a month. Sometimes it's a great deal. Sometimes I'm spending 3 times the amount that I would have on the day you asked me. Right. Right? So it allows me to give somebody the best value. It allows me to have fun with the menus. It allows me to play a lot more. And if I'm having fun cooking your menu, you're going to have a great time. Totally, yeah. Right? And, I always say to people, like, there's one picky guest coming to our event. And I'll just say to them, like, we're not their mother. Right? Like, we can't satisfy everyone. Yeah. Like, don't have a bad time because there's one guest. Right. Right? Yeah, don't like allow that person to be picky. I don't care. They can tell me they don't like my food, whatever. Yeah. Right? You learn very quickly to let the ego just go away. Yeah. Right? That's cool. So like what goes through your mind then? Like how are you coming up with that? Like is it just kind of how you're like obviously it sounds like what's available, but like once you have all those ideas, like how does the idea come and then how do the meals come to fruition? Is it just like something you're feeling? Is there a process? Is there like... I get asked this a lot, and sometimes I'll go to the store, I'll go to the butcher, I'll ask what's available, and sometimes I'll sit on it, I'll wait, and I'll just be sitting there, and I'll just think, got the idea. One dish will curate then the whole menu, because I want everything to go. When you're creating a menu, like even sometimes up to 7 courses, right? You're going to start with something that you want the first dish that they have to be super memorable, super impactful, and just a bomb of flavor. It's the first thing that they put in their mouth. If the next thing, it's not going to be as memorable and sensational because you got to be careful when you're creating a menu that you don't want to fatigue the palate. So I'm sure you've had a meal sometimes where you're like, you get to the point where you're eating because you're eating, but you've already tasted. It's like when you're hungry and you have that first bite of food, it's the best bite of the day, right? And then you get through it and you're like, it's okay, right? Your goal is to never get to that point. So there are rules that I kind of follow. Like the meal needs to ebb and flow a bit. There needs to be, like, this might be super rich, so this is nice and bright. This is maybe neutral on the palate. Maybe then you have a palate cleanser that's nice and like fruity or citrusy to like kind of like get the palate going again, to kind of cleanse it. Sometimes it's a cocktail just to add like bitterness into the mouth. But I'll usually focus it around one or two dishes or the star dishes, and then kind of fill in the blanks in between there.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I'm curious because, like, I think, one thing I've learned from, like, owning a business and trying to create an experience, like, we're in a service-based industry here, so are you. Like, an experience is a very important thing, from, like, how you speak to people, from how they come in, to how they take in the space, to how the space is laid out, to the language that you use, all that kind of stuff. So, like, we very much try to think about that and optimize for providing people with an unforgettable experience when they come through our doors. And so I'm always interested in hearing, like, other people in completely other spaces talk about their approach to it, because what I think people underestimate is when they have a good experience, they assume it's by accident, but it's very much like intentionally designed to give you the experience you're getting. Whereas, like, I think sometimes you miss out on that when you have a good experience versus a bad experience. A bad experience, you're very much like, oh, this was terrible. This is why it was horrible. These people are not good at what they're doing. But when someone's like peak at what they're doing, you forget that, like, oh yeah, that was intentional. Like, the way that you set up this first plate, to how you cleanse the palate, to how you give this, to how you do that, is all intentional to create the experience that you're getting.
But I think it's more than that, right? So, like, when you go to a restaurant, you could say that's blankly it, right? A lot of restaurants do that. I think that when a restaurant nails it right, the service is also just as key. But when I'm going into somebody's home, I have to think of myself as a form of entertainment as well, right? So I need to make sure that I'm well caffeinated and happy as can be, putting on the smile. I need to bring it up a notch, and I need to be the thing that drives the conversations, and I need to basically try to make people happy, right? So when I'm done an event, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Right, but I love it. Also, another thing that I think is very key is just like that. Some events I go to, you can tell that people just want to have their food, have you as like almost like a servant, and then leave. Right, which I'm fine with. It's your experience. You're paying me. That's fine. But most cases, people want to interact with you. They want to have you stay for a drink after. They want you to drink with them. They want to hover around you in the kitchen. And I'm people always ask me, is this okay? I'm like, it's your experience. It might be a little prolonged because I'm chatting with you the whole time.
Right.
But you're paying me to be here.
As long as you're cool with that.
And one thing that I think benefits me is I am very versed in ranges of topics that interest me. So I can go into a house I've cooked for somebody who is an anthropologist and just talked for like an hour about anthropology.
Your almost other career path.
I can talk to somebody about finance and economics for hours. I can talk to somebody about, botany. I can talk to somebody about, like, I read scientific journals. I think that being able to connect with people with something on the side is another thing to say, like, oh, what you think is interesting, I find interesting too. Right? Like I went to school, I know tons about physiology, and now we could talk about the human anatomy for quite a while, and strength training and hypertrophy, all that kind of stuff fascinates the hell out of me. So I think having that, I'm very ADHD in the way that I take in information. So to be able to talk to people about that is to me, I find a huge advantage. Yeah,
I mean, you're very relatable, but also like finding a common ground to build a relationship off of, which is key when you're doing any service-based industry or anything like that. Like, people want, one, to feel like they're taken care of, but two, to like have a relationship with you most of the time, right?
Sometimes you have to let somebody else be the expert.
Yeah.
Right? But to show them that you have interest. When I go into people's homes, I'm always educating them about food. Right? Like, one thing that people always say to me is I learned so much. Whether I'm cooking for them or I'm doing a workshop, they always say, I learned so much just from talking to you about food. And I think that sometimes it's better to be on the opposite side and listen to people and take in what they have to say. And I think that builds trust, relationship, a good rapport with that person.
Totally, yeah.
So it's not all about the cooking. It's not all about the curated experience. Sometimes it's just about the in-between actions that leave that person feeling like, oh, this person was really invested in me today or my group today.
Yeah, for sure. On that note of education, like it's clear that that's something that you're passionate about, just with like having looked at your Instagram, your YouTube, you know, you've done other like various cooking shows, like, you know, you do workshops for people. Like, why is that so important to you?
Two facets. I think that I just love to teach what I know. So if I have something to know, I'm never going to shy away. Nothing's a hidden secret. Like if I found the information, you can find the information. So what's the point of safeguarding it?
Yeah.
Secondly, I think that we live in a world where people don't know how to cook like they used to. So today people oftentimes say like, oh, I cooked this really good thing. I got off Pinterest or I got off TikTok or off the internet, things like that. Whereas before, recipes used to be more knowledge-based. And so if you spend 3 hours with me, I could teach you how to cook intuitively, right? Some people go to workshops where they go and they hold this recipe card and they teach them how to do this recipe. I give 0 recipes to people because I'm trying to teach you how to cook a repertoire of food, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to have people have the confidence and knowledge to be able to go away and not just copy what I taught them that day, but to take this tip and that tip and get like, how do I cut this fast to get like food on my table quicker? How do I season properly? How do I break down a chicken? He taught me how to make pizza, but then also like he showed me what other things I can do with this dough. So now I can make focaccia, I can make pizza, I can make baguettes, I can make bowls, I can make all these different things, but I just went to learn pizza. Right?
Yeah.
And I think just passing that intuitive knowledge is way more valuable than giving somebody a recipe. It allows them to say, I have this in my fridge, what can I do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's cool because like it's very much aligns with like how we approach things around here. Like, you know, we're very much focused on educating clients, and like one of our missions here is to empower people to take control of their health. And one way that we find that you can do that is through educating people on principles versus like, hey, here's this exercise that can help your back pain.
Yeah.
Let's teach you about the principles around this.
But why?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing is but why? So I think that that's a very valuable thing to teach people.
And it's kind of in the same sense of what you're saying is like, okay, if I can give people some of these principles and the why behind why you're doing these things, like it puts the locus of control on them. They can now go and do their own thing in the kitchen, with the skill set that you've taught them, the principles you've taught them, similar to like if I'm teaching someone how to manage their back pain based off these principles, it's like the next time this pops up, if you apply these principles to what's going on, you can probably manage this on your own. And have control over that. And I think having control over, from our perspective, having control over managing your injuries to a degree until you can't is very powerful versus like, oh, I hurt my back, I'm going to come see Dalton because every time I hurt my back, I'm going to go see Dalton, which is cool, but like I want to teach you the skills to manage it on your own because I just think there's more power in that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And so I always like hearing the parallels between like different spaces with like similar ideas, right?
It's all those knowledge-based things. You're just trying to, I mean, your job is complete whenever they don't need you anymore, right? I used to work for this person. One of my favorite quotes I've ever heard from somebody is, you aren't a master at something. He was a carpenter. He's like, you aren't a master at something when you, I'm going to butcher this. You aren't a master at something when you can do it. You're a master at something when you can fix it. Right? So like, you can take somebody through the motions and you can give somebody the recipes and then they can copy all those recipes and things like that. But what if they're their heat source is different than what they learned on? What if they don't have basil? What if they don't have like this cut of meat? Well, what are you gonna do, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing in your career. Like you can teach somebody how to do certain exercises, but what if their anatomy, like a deadlift, for example, you'll hear so many people say like, well, you can't do a deadlift like this. But what if you're 6'5"? Mm-hmm. Your deadlift is going to look so different than the average poster that they're showing you, right? Your squat, like your knees can't go over here. What if you're like a tiny person? That might exist for you, but the world's not perfect like that, right? So you as the expert, you're going to say, well, this is how you fix that. This is okay because your anatomy is of this, right? You can fit in those missing pieces and fix those little things and teach them why it's okay. Other than just an infographic that you find on Pinterest or TikTok that tells you it's right or wrong.
Totally, yeah,
right?
yeah. Context and everything.
Context matters.
Yeah, it
right?
does. Yeah, for sure. No, that's cool. I'd love to go into like a couple rapid fire questions for you.
Sounds good.
I would imagine you're pretty familiar with the Hamilton scene of like stuff, or what? Like you grew up where again?
I grew up like Central Mountain.
Okay, yeah. So let's do a couple rapid fire questions.
Okay.
What would be like one of your favorite local coffee shops, Hamilton based?
I'm gonna sound terrible here.
It's okay.
But I just make my own coffee.
Totally. How do you make your coffee? You a big coffee guy, or are you more?
I'm a huge coffee guy.
Okay.
I will sometimes drink like 2 liters of coffee a day.
Yeah.
I've got an espresso machine. Okay. I've got the mocha pot. I've got French presses.
Many implements.
Yeah, I've got the stovetop espresso. I've got drip machine. I've got Keurig. I do cold brew.
Okay.
So when I have all these...
He's like, well, I'm not going to go out to spend money.
Yeah, I'm sure there are great coffee shops out there.
Yeah, the reason I ask is like every time I ask someone this question that frequents coffee shops, there's always a new coffee shop in Hamilton that they're like, oh yeah, I went to this coffee shop.
Well, plus I live in an inconvenient place for coffee.
It's true.
Right? There's no coffee shops around me other than Tim Hortons, McDonald's, Starbucks. And I don't want them. Yeah,
no, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, what about like a favorite local like brewery?
Favorite local brewery? I like the one here. What's it called?
Dundas?
Yeah.
Shed?
Yeah, Shed is really good. I used to do pop-ups there before COVID.
Nice. Yeah, Shed's great.
Their lager is just a very clean.
I'm a big fan of their. I'm not a big
lager.
Beer guy, but like their lager, I really enjoy their lager.
Yep. Trying to think. I'm supposed to go to Grain and Grits soon.
Cool.
But I haven't been there yet. But I've heard great things about them.
They're great. And like Lindsay is great. She's actually the second person I interviewed on this podcast.
Oh yeah, she's the manager, right?
She's one of the owners, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
Grain and Grit's great. One place I think would be cool that fits seems like it fits your vibe of stuff too is they just opened up here in Dundas. It's I'm gonna blank on the name now. I interviewed the owner of it, Barrel Heart Brewing.
Oh yeah.
So they just opened up in Dundas here, and they do like more like saisons, and it's like kind of like a higher end kind of vibe feel to it, but
more experimental.
Yeah, but like a really good product. And he's a great dude. So yeah.
I mean, that's like one of my favorite wineries is in Niagara or in Jordan, I think. It's on the bench. Mm. It's Rosewood, and surely just because they're bold enough to experiment.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love a story behind something.
Yeah.
I don't care if I have a bad bottle of something if there's like a cool story behind it.
Totally.
Right? Like, tell me why you did it. I want to know what the process was. Things like that. That to me is priceless, right?
Yeah, for sure. I know this probably isn't a fair question, but I would imagine you go out to eat, but like...
Not often.
Yeah, I mean, as being a chef, you're probably cooking yourself good meals, but like, is there a place that you've enjoyed recently in the area, or...
I'm really bad for going to bad places. So I like, sometimes...
Me too.
Yeah, like I people always ask me, like when I cook them these extravagant meals, they'll be like, "Oh, you must eat like this all the time." I'm thinking, and then I'm like, you know how much work this is?
You think I'm doing this on the daily?
You think I'm doing this like just to feed myself lunch? I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I eat really well, but then sometimes like I just want a fast food burger, things like that. If I want like a better burger, I'll go to like Hamburger.
Yeah, I was just at Hamburger. I've been there a couple times, but I was just there like 2 weeks ago.
And like there's like Five Guys, I think is terrible. I hate them. Like I think that they're giving you like the biggest piece of boiled meat, and charging you a lot for it. So go to Hamburger instead.
Yeah.
You know, I need to go down to My Pie. Solar, who owns that, such a great guy.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I never go downtown.
Yeah. I've had My Pie. I really enjoy it. I've always ordered out.
Like I've had his pizza.
Yeah.
Because we did a pizza competition.
Oh, nice.
And I've had his pizza and his like.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. But I've never been down there. Just the inconvenience of going down the mountain.
Yeah.
When you live up the mountain.
Yeah.
Especially like around me, like I can't just hop on a bus and go down there. Who else is doing great things that I know of? It's a hard on the spot question.
No, it's okay. Yeah, those are good.
But yeah, there's a lot of like, from what I know is there's a lot of great places opening up. I just wish someone would open up on the mountain.
Yeah, there you go.
Like that would be handy to me.
This is a call to all you
this is a call. Like,
restaurateurs. Yeah.
Open up on the mountain. Yeah. I know it's more expensive.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem is the chain restaurants dominate the mountain.
That's true. Yeah. What is like one of the more recent like meals that you've cooked that you've really enjoyed or that excited you?
Ooh, that's tough. It's a good question because I got asked the other day, like what my favorite thing to cook is. And it's always rotating. So, I think once I get comfortable cooking something, I've cooked it for too long. Right. Mm-hmm. And then I almost like move away from it. The best thing that I've maybe cooked recently, I always impress myself with desserts because I'm not a baker. I made this this panna cotta that was made with almond milk, and underneath it was like a play on 3 different nuts. So I made a Sicilian pistachio cake, and then on top of that was my almond panna cotta, and then I did a walnut praline on top. And oh my god, it was so good. And like to me, I like the process of cooking more than I like the eating part, and I love to eat, so it goes to say something.
Yeah.
If you give me no judgment in a day, I can probably crush 10,000 calories.
Yeah, me and you both, dude.
Yeah. And then like I always love like a good like ragu bolognese. I like to do mine with like oxtail and short ribs.
Oh yeah.
So it's like just nice and gelatinous and gooey. And then, menus as a whole, I think is where, because when I do things for clients, I don't think of it as like one dish. I think of it as like a menu.
Sure. It all kind of like intertwines and works together versus like the one-off dish being something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that one menu that I did the panna cotta for, that menu I did as super happy with it, super proud of it. I did a Parisian gnocchi with a herb oil and Parmesan foam that covered the dish. That was really good. I did a braised like a braised steak instead of like a cooked steak, because I think that so many people nowadays, like, I think that steak is like people's creme de la creme, and I think that there's so many different cuts on a cow like that we underappreciate. So I try to really cook with those, basically educate people on you're spending like $60 on the steak, let's spend half the amount and get a better experience. It takes more skill to cook these, but like everyone's had prime rib. How are you going to impress me with the prime rib anymore? Mm-hmm. Right? And then I did beef tongue dish with that. Really trying to like get people uncomfortable, but then like comforted with the uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
To show you that beef tongue had to cook for 36 hours, right? Before it was like buttery tender.
Right.
But it's that, I think that's where you need somebody who's like a chef to come in and say like, there are skills that can get you here without going for like the prime cuts
Right.
or like the most known ingredients.
Right.
So yeah, I really try to focus on that nowadays.
Yeah.
Or cooking with a historical context, I like to do as well.
That's cool. The last question I always like to ask everyone is like, when you hear the word move local, like what does that mean to you specifically?
I probably have one of the most skewed opinions on this. I think it was Wolfgang Puck said, like, fuck local if somebody else is producing something better.
Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, I think, like, local to me is more about community, which is something I'm trying to get better at. I think that community only builds you up. I think that we live in a place where not everything's always local all the time. And I don't think that there's harm in that. I know Johnny Blonde is huge. I've never met anybody so focused on local ingredients before. He does a great job doing it. But to me, I'm looking for the best, right? And like sometimes the best cheese comes from Italy or France. Do they make great cheese here? Yes. Have you ever had Udderway?
No.
No, they're up on Highway 20, past Upper Centennial, and like their cheese is phenomenal. But sometimes you want Parmigiano Reggiano, right? You don't want something local. So to me, I like to focus the local more on community than anything else.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm also of the mindset of, is local beef always best? If we have to clear a forest for that beef, is that the best beef? Or is the best beef, somewhere where it's already plains, somewhere already grassland? I always try to think about that as a concept as well. They know there's pin bones here. Like a lot of their fish comes from the sea. We don't live around the sea. But I still would like to support them as a business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's interesting because like I think I agree with what you're saying in a sense, and I think like move local doesn't necessarily have to be you consume everything local, but it can be from a community aspect.
Have you ever had salmon from the Great Lakes? You don't want to. It doesn't taste that good.
Yeah. Right. No, I mean, to your point, like I get what you're saying for sure, and I think there's many aspects of the term local or supporting local can be done in many different ways, and it doesn't always have to be like you're saying, like consuming everything local. It could be like you're supporting Pin Bones. It's a local company that is supporting the local, environment, but it's food's coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And like that's fine.
But also like I think I could get flack for this, but I think to focus on a radius of where you're getting your stuff from, why shouldn't we be getting like from the Arctic area, you can get like cloudberries and things like that, right? Why? I think that you're basically putting an artificial border on who you can help, right? So I think that supporting your community is amazing. I think that we don't do it enough. I think that we're more likely to support like huge corporations because they're convenient. But I think that community is so widespread nowadays that I think just support people.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the great thing. And then when it comes to support local, like support like the mom and pop shop, support the photographer, support the butcher that you have, right? And if they're doing a good job, then they'll be rewarded for it. Yeah.
No, it's cool. I'd love for you to let people know where they can follow you on Instagram, or if they do want to reach out to you for any services or anything like that.
So all my social media handles from Instagram, TikTok, YouTube are Chef Clay Smith or at Chef Clay Smith. And then my website is chefclaysmith.com. And yeah, they can just reach out to me on any of those platforms. Cool. Well, I appreciate your time, Clay. It was a great conversation. Oh, no worries. And I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Make sure you guys head over, check him out, follow him, look at his stuff. And appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next one. Well, thanks for having me. That was great.